Hi everyone.
Hi.
All right, welcome to my talk, Color Your World with Chakra's Color Picker. So, when I was thinking about the talk to give for this evening, I was like, there were so many things to talk about. More so now that Chakra UI V3 is out. But I think a couple of weeks back, I had a live stream with Sage where we worked on the color picker, moving it from Arc UI to Chakra UI, and then I explored it both on the documentation, and I think I just fell in love with the color picker, and I was like, yes, I'm going to make my talk on the color picker. So a brief about me. My name is Esther Adebayo, and I work as a developer advocate at Chakra UI. So you've probably seen some of my work in terms of documentation, content, blog articles, tweets, videos, and even organizing meetups like this. So, yeah, feel free to connect with me on Twitter, on YouTube, where I host a tech podcast, and on LinkedIn. So, let's get started. Today, I have 90% of the initial impression of a website based on color. So, this is a very interesting start because 90% is a huge number, right? And this tells us that color is nearly everything when it comes to developing or building a website. Just imagine for a second if you go on a website that is very, ugly, maybe the website is using just one single color, will be pretty bland, and you probably just close out of it and be like, oh no, these people are just writing crap code. So as developers, we want to ensure that we are creating great user experience for the users that are using our websites or applications. And color is one of the things that help us to do that. Now, users perceive color in different ways. When we think about the red color, for example, if we use a red color on a banner or on an action button, it probably signifies danger or don't do this. And if it's a color that, is used as a background, you probably have a feeling of maybe love, like Valentine's Day, you see red everywhere. So that's how users interact with color. On the flip side, if you see like a green banner, a green button, this tells you, oh, success, or notifies you about something good. So that's how users perceive color. And when it comes to a color picker, right, one of the most important things that users want to do is to be able to customize their interface. When you can customize it to your preference, your preferred colors, it makes the application a lot more interesting to the user. And one of the ways that we can give users this ability is by using a color picker. So this is one of the use cases that a color picker gives us, an ability to give a user, the flexibility to customize the application. Take, for example, as developers, if maybe you're working in a company that is, giving the application or instances of the application to other developers or a different company, that company will likely need to white label that instance of the application. And that's also a very good use case of the color picker. So when developers think of a color, think about the flexibility they want their application to have. The color picker is one of the components that they need to have in their design system or their component library. Now let's get deeper into what makes a great color picker. So as a developer in a company, you're probably thinking, okay, we need a color picker in our organization, right? But what are some of the things that we need to consider before picking a color picker? Now, one of the things is the ease of use and accessibility. So you want to pick a color picker that allows you to, easily use it in your code base. The code is not too bloated, and a color picker that also supports accessibility, because accessibility is very important. You also want to pick a color picker that is very flexible. A color picker or different components have different parts, and you want to make sure that the color picker can work in any use case that you have. You can compose different parts of the color picker to fit or match your use case. You also want to think about customizable options like swatches or the color formats, and finally, advanced features like the eyedropper tool should be available in a great color picker. Now let's dive into Chakra's color picker. This is the basic example of Chakra's color picker. We see that we have this part that has like an input and the trigger, and then we have this part which is like the color area of the color picker, as well as the eyedropper and the sliders. So this is the anatomy, like Sage talked about earlier when he was giving his talk. There are different parts usually of a component. So for the color picker, you see that right here, this is the label, and this label really just gives context to the user about the color picker. You see that there's a root, so the root component or the root part acts like a container or the wrapper for our color picker. We have the trigger, which really opens up this whole content area, and then we have the eyedropper that allows the user to select any color on the screen, as well as the sliders for both opacity and the different color range. So here's a quick breakdown of the code regarding the different parts of the color picker. You notice that in this breakdown, the input and the trigger are in the color picker control, which we didn't see earlier. So the input trigger are in the color picker control, and the color picker area, the eyedropper, and the sliders are in the color picker content. So this is how Chakra UI lays out the different parts of the color picker in a way that is modular and flexible for developers. So without further ado, let's get into our code demo. So help me God, I will not have any bugs. So today for this demo, we're going to be building a custom color picker based off of what Chakra UI gives us. And what we're going to be doing is we're going to be changing the background of a login screen. We're also going to be changing the text color of a login screen based off of the color picker. And finally, adding swatches to the color picker. So let's dive into it. Let me pull up my VS Code. This is a V project, and I'm just going to start the terminal, my server, so that we see what this gives us. All right, so let me zoom in. Okay, I think we can see, right? So zoomed in? Yeah. It's fine. Okay, so this is a big project, and it's really a login screen, right? You can see it's an auth screen, and right here, this is where we want the color picker. So ideally, when we drag through any of the color values, this background is supposed to change. That's what we need to do now. So let me just arrange my screen. It's easy for us. So the first thing is, obviously, in Chakra UI v3, you have snippets. So we need to add the color picker snippets to our project. We're going to run the command npx add Chakra UI /CLI snippets add color picker. So this adds the color picker snippets to our application, and now we are ready to use it. So we go into our custom color picker file right here, and this is where we're going to be building the color picker. I'm going to build a color picker component. Just going to call it custom color picker. And remember from the parts, we mentioned that it has a root which is like a container. So we're going to get the color picker root component, and we ensure that we're importing from the snippet, which is the ./component/UI. So that's the import part. And then within our root, we obviously need to have a color picker label. And we're just going to call this color. The label would be called color. Then we need to have our color picker control. Within our color picker control, if you remember from when we're presenting, we have two parts. We have our color picker input. We also have our color picker trigger. So that's that for the color picker control. Next one is the color picker content. So we add the color picker content to this. And within here, there are a couple of parts that we need to have. We need to have our color picker area, which is really the area that allows users to pick a color. We also need to have our eyedropper and our sliders, but that is wrapped in an H stack. They are stacked horizontally. So we grab our H stack component from Chakra, and within this we put in our color picker, eyedropper, as well as our color picker sliders. Alright, so now we have our custom color picker using what Chakra UI provides us with. So we can go into our login screen and render this so that we see how it shows up in our localhost. So this is custom color picker. Okay, so awesome. Our color picker now shows up and we have it. Obviously, we need to store some of these values or the value of the color picker in some states, right? So this tells us that we can import useState to hold the state of the color picker. So going back into this, let's store the color in some states. So we're just going to say color, set color, and we're going to import useState, obviously from the app. I'm going to be using the pass color, which is a method in Chakra UI that helps us, use the colors to be imported. Okay, so we're going to give this, let's just say the background is white, right? So color picker root takes a couple of props. It takes a default value prop, which we can set to color. It also takes an on value change prop that allows us to change, the value of that allows us to set the color when the value changes. We're just going to set the color and say e.value. So this way we are able to store state now, and obviously, oops, let me see what's wrong. Okay, I think I know what. Is it? Yeah. All right. So this way we're able to store state, but obviously it's still not working because login needs to have access to the values that are coming from the state. And right now, this is really just embedded in our color picker. So what we need to do now is to move the state to login. So we need to move the state to login and also use props to pass the values to the color picker. So we're going to also take this out, pass it to the login here because they're going to be props. And obviously we need to create the props in our custom color picker. So we're going to specify, custom color picker. We're going to specify the interface for the props. Custom color picker props. The first thing is color picker roots. Chakra exposes the color picker root props for us, so we can easily just extend it and add it on top. We're just going to say color picker root props. Root props. And we're also going to add another prop, which we'll call label. And in a minute from now, you understand why extracting color as a label prop. So I'm going to add label. So our label will also be prop, and we're going to specify it as a string. So we'll pass our props here as color picker custom. I was wondering, what did I call it? Custom color picker props. Okay, let me just copy it. Yeah, and then I destructure my props. I destructure label, and I spread the rest and I pass this. I also pass my label and spread the rest on the root. Okay, so right now, what we've done is really just to move the state up and, add it to login. Obviously, we need to add a label here. That's why it's throwing an error. And we call this color. So the final thing to make our background change is we need to go to the part that has the background color, which is going to be this box right here. And we're going to add BG and set it to color. Obviously, we need to import useState as well as pass color from Chakra. Yeah, so this is throwing an error because color is not just a string. We need to convert color to a string. We're going to say color.toString, and we can specify the value or the type of the color. So we're just going to say hex A, which is hex alpha. So now we swipe and we see that, okay, I think it's working, which is what we want to happen. So this way, we've been able to connect our color picker to the background of our login screen. So someone else can come and say, this is not really great code because when we drag to darker colors, the text colors are not visible and it's no longer accessible. So we can really take this to the next level by just making sure that the color, we can also use a color picker to change the color. So we're literally going to repeat the same steps and just call this text color, and this will be set text color. Obviously we can leave this as this, and we're going to create another color picker for this purpose, and this will be set text color, and the default value obviously will be text color, and my label, I'm just going to call this text color. For this, I'm going to call this background color, so we are explicit. And we need to go to where we need, I'm going to add the text color to the container so that all the text inherits the color as opposed to adding them every time. So I'm going to add color here and set it to text color dot to string, and also to be. So when we check, see that we can change our background color, and we can also change our text color, which is awesome, right? Very awesome. I think one of the reasons I like the color picker is it's really just very sweet to just be scrubbing on different colors like this. And the final thing is, in some scenarios, you might really want to restrict your users to some specific colors. You don't want them to just keep scrubbing. You want them to have specific swatches that they can pick from. And Chakra UI's color picker allows you to do this by also, supplying you a way that you can have swatches within your color picker. So I already have this created here. Within our color picker content, we can add in a color picker swatch group. And the color picker swatch group really just maps to a swatches array and renders the color picker swatch trigger right here. And the only thing that changes is we now need a swatches array. So we go back to our login screen, and what we need to do is to just make this, custom color picker swatch. So that's what we're going to use here. And I'm just going to pass an array called swatches. It's an array, so I'm just going to pass like red, blue, and yellow. So now, if we go back to our code, we see that we now have these swatches that allows us to then easily pick any of the colors that we want your user to have. And obviously, that's exactly how the Chakra color picker works. And one of the things I love about it is the fact that it's very accessible. For example, I'm just using tab and my keyboard to control all of this. And this is just how Chakra UI works. You can always tap and control the opacity as well. So it's very accessible, which is great because you do not have to think about accessibility again. So to wrap this up, thankfully my code worked. Everything worked as expected. So let's wrap this up. Let me see. So there's still so much you can do with the color picker. For example, you can use a circle trigger if you want by just setting the rounded to full on your color picker trigger. That's the code. It's in the documentation. All of these examples are in the documentation, so you do not necessarily need to cram it, right? You can also select different variants. Chakra UI comes with 2 variants at the moment of color picker: the outline variant, which is the default variant, and the subtle variant, which is a different kind of variant. Also has different sizes from extra small size to extra large size. And finally, you're able to give users the ability to pick different color channel sliders. For example, the RGBA format, the HSLA format, or the HSB, which is hue, saturation, I remember, brightness, and alpha. Yeah, so to wrap things up, when thinking about a color picker, think about the modularity. How modular is it? How composable are the parts? Think about accessibility and think about the ease of use. So go ahead to explore color picker. I'm very excited to see what everyone is going to build with the color picker component. And thank you very much.